Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Hearts of Iron 4, the new order, last days of Europe with me, Alpha Pi Omega, and the Empire of Japan. So we continue with the Davy investigation. In 63 days we're gonna be dealt a new hand in the House of Cards, but other than that, I think we are doing sort of good. We have gathered some information about Yuntong, so we're gonna see what this year is gonna bring us. In the meantime, I wanted to check how our production efficiency was on the new weapons. So the advanced anti-air is being produced at a really nice rate. The advanced infantry weapons are also being produced at a really nice rate. Same with the anti-tank. We have all of those in our advanced anti-tank. Not completely equipped with the advanced anti-tank yet. So anti-air is and anti-tank isn't. Type 27, I believe that's the new one, right? Yep. Okay, so they got new weapons already. But the rest of the army is gonna suffer. At least for now. Okay, we're converting the Type 20s to Type 21s still. 4.7 per day. Efficiency is slowly increasing. And then we got... Jesus. Still an entire year to go on the carriers. Interesting to see. Shingara and Hagura. No, okay. 205. I wonder, because we haven't really discussed if we could upgrade some of the ships with the new radar. So what are the Yamato? Okay, new radar and new fire control system. Super cheap upgrade, but it gives a little bit of light attack, heavy attack, anti-air, and subdetection. So not a bad choice. And let's say for these Soyokas. Okay, nothing for the Soyokas, so it's just for the bigger ships. Still good to know that it's there. Okay, adrift in the Sea of Leads. Despite all the information that the investigators have gathered, something simply was not adding up. He had followed several good leads, tied the evidence together, and still wound up at a brick wall. Surely he had just missed some detail. Perhaps he needed to listen to one of the interviews again. There had to be a link somewhere. Across the table, his colleague looked up from his papers. Why don't you take a break for the day? You've been looking over the same leads for hours now. I doubt you've actually gotten anywhere. It's not that I'm stuck, it's that something isn't adding together properly. No matter how I look at it, there's always a dead end. I would appreciate your help. Well, my advice is that you stop and try something else. You're acting as if you already have the big picture. Perhaps something really is just missing. The investigator was forced to concede. There were other paths for the investigation to pursue. Paranoia increases somewhat. Really not much. We could go with the fight inter-service corruption. It would lower the support though significantly. So inter-service training program would be probably better. Let's get that one. I really think that the support from the Army and Navy is going to be crucial here. So let's promote officers for the Army as well. So we get both now at 77.5. Perna is at 6.5. That looks good to me. Fix input is fine. This is okay. Okay, economy is increasing even more. It's very good. China is already at 65 billion. State of Manchuria 46 billion. Guangdong very close to jumping over Manchuria. Confederate cities of New Granada, Republic of Indonesia, Shinan, Zaire. Interesting. Okay, the fate of the American Expeditionary Forces. The Sino-American cooperative organization, the American Expeditionary Force, that was deployed during the Second World War, was believed to have been fully evacuated by 1944. With far more pressing matters to take care of, the traces of behind the SACO were quickly investigated and then mostly forgotten. They became little more than a memory from the war that left little behind to concern Japan, or so it was believed. With a link between the Americans and DEFCON having recently been uncovered, the remains of the SACO's presence that later China became a priority for the investigation. A number of planes were wrecked in close proximity to each other, and the site might prove vital to finding out what truly happened to the Americans. At the same time, the security minister has contacted spies in the United States, should they be capable of finding files on the fate of the expeditionary force. It is suspected that records of who among the Americans returned alive are still kept, and that they are within our reach. At the behest of the Home Minister, it was decided that the investigation officer be given the reins to choose which route to pursue first. Furies raced through the heads of the investigators as they considered their options. Had the DEFCON escaped the war through with the evacuating Americans, only to return a few months ago? Was SACO helped to establish DEFCON's presence in China over 20 years ago? Could it be that the United States were funding DEFCON, using the evacuation in 1944 as a cover for the forces secretly remaining in the region? In truth, the only truth that the investigators could count on for now was that only by digging deeper would they uncover what they sought. Did all Americans feel abandoned China? Romania abandons Transnistria. Really? Again? Official communications from Bucharest have confirmed that what most of us expected for a while, as the Romanian government has announced its evacuation of the Transnistrian territory. International observers have diagnosed the cost of this as the result of the brutal and unending insurgency within the region and the ascension of Radu Campianu as Prime Minister, a result widely believed to have been the cause of student protests triggered by the conflict. The future of the former governorate is that of further Reich control as Romania transfers its responsibility to the German administration, ruled under the apathetic control of military man Siegfried Haas. Antonescu's remnant abandoned. Okay, so they created Gebiet der Militär Behilfshabers in Transnistrien. Interesting. And Kazakhstan has won the war. Shalokov runs out of answers. Tashenev defeats the Akhmova government. Over the last 20 years, Kazakhs has increasingly viewed Kazakhstan has increasingly viewed itself as an independent state, separate from the USSR. Today, that separation appears to be complete. Following final skirmishes in the north of the country, it appears that Zymabek Tashenev's Kazakh-led government has defeated the Astana breakaway. At a speech in Almaty, Tashenev pronounced the beginning of a new era for Kazakhstan, and that the new constitution will be completed in the coming months. Along with political reforms, Tashenev is expected to rebuild the economy using Bolshevist principles. The world awaits a reaction from Russia, and one must hope that this conflict will not re-emerge in the future. So we finished the field hospitals, which allows us an option to get this one, Industry Management 5. Techniques for improving productivity not only involve workers and in their specific roles, but also layout and spatial organization. New methods of planning now incorporate specific factory designs with segmented and interlinked regions to minimize the wasteful space and keep the flow of production running with as few obstacles as possible. Okay, so we finished the national focus called the unlikely. No, the stage is set, and now we can get the tab on students. An unlikely friendship. Takagi sat upright in Ikeda's office and faced the Prime Minister with a calm expression on his face. Ikeda smiled at Takagi from behind his desk, discussing with him the complexities of inflation rate of the yen and the government's role in managing imports while shuffling the notes and scribing from their conversation on his desk. With his papers now cleared, Ikeda rested his hands on his desk and expressed his warm feelings towards Takagi's leadership in the Diet. I'm glad people like you and I can get along, Mr. Takagi. We are alike. We are men of pragmatism and logical conclusions. I'd love to spend more time in your company as a colleague and as a friend. Takagi nodded and returned his gratitude to the Prime Minister, reaching to shake his hand as he stood up from the comfortable leather chair. Chuckling and saying his farewells, Ikeda watched Takagi bow and leave the room, impressed at himself with his choice of allies in the Diet. An excellent choice of friends. So now a tab on students. With the recent accomplishment in the economic and social issues, the time has come for the reformists to concede to conservative form. The students are the most salient supporters of Takagi, and the youth is rarely marked by either restraint or quietude. The rest of the Yokosankai look down on them, for without experience they are dissidents whose opinion hold danger to the integrity of society. The reformists, in contrast, cater to them. This is where they would have to concede. In exchange for implementing their stances on the economy and issues of social nature, Takagi would have to tell his youthful followers to, for the lack of a better phrase, calm the hell down. The Kokutai, if preserved, shall serve Japan and her citizens in due time. Once they have garnered the experience and lived a bit more, perhaps we would see their point. As it stands, the sit-ins and demonstrations change nothing. Okay, so in the end, we, castrate the students. Stability increased by 5, oppressive police policy effectiveness increases, and we have a decrease in public support. As you should. Okay, I don't like these choices, because if you choose poorly, we are gonna die. The Sino-American Cooperative Organization, the American expeditionary force that was deployed during the war, was believed to have been fully evacuated by 1944. With far more pressing matters to take care of, the traces left behind by SACO were quickly investigated and then mostly forgotten. They became little more than a memory from the war that left little behind to concern Japan. Or so it was believed. With a link between the Americans and Davy having recently been uncovered, the remains of the SACO's presence that later China became a priority for the investigation. A number of planes were wrecked in close proximity to each other, and this site might prove vital to finding out what truly happened to the Americans. At the same time, the security minister has contacted spies in the United States. Should they be capable of finding files on the fate of the expeditionary force? It is suspected that the records of who among the Americans returned alive are still kept, and that they are within our reach. All at the behest of General Iwaichi Fujiwara, it was decided that the investigation officers be given the reins to choose which route to pursue first. Furies raced through the head of the investigators as they considered their options. Had the daimyo escaped the war through with the evacuating Americans, only to return a few months ago? Has SACO helped to establish Dairy's presence in China over 20 years ago? Would it be that the United States were funding Dairy, using the evacuation in 1944 as a cover for their forces secretly remaining in the region? In truth, the only truth that the investigators could count on so far was that only by digging deeper they would uncover what they sought. Investigate the crash sites again. We need information first. The Republic of Zimbabwe declared war on the Botswana-Zimbabwe Democratic Front. Well, that's gonna be an interesting fight. So deputy GDP should drop below 94%, and GDP is gonna jump above 280 billion. Really nice. Still in a deficit, but a minor one. Yep. Wow, we're almost at 281 actually, and 93.9. What about the poverty? I want to see how we're doing on that. Lowered slightly, but not much. Crash site laid bare. Let us deal with this first. So crash site laid bare. The crash site would be examined first upon the investigator's suggestion. After all, the American documents were at least being preserved in a drawer somewhere. Their journey from the airport at Nanjing to the mountains of southwestern China had presented them with a multitude of memorable vistas as they traveled by railroad and finally a footpath to reach the destination. It was nothing short of deeply refreshing to leave Tokyo's office for more than a day or two. The sites themselves consisted of wrecks of about 4 downed American aircraft, lost during their attempted evacuation in 1944. In the ensuing 20 years since the initial investigation has closed, with little to report other than the obvious, nature had distinctively managed to reclaim much of the wreckage. Nature has also begun to creep back into 1 or 2 sites, with a wing or 2 sticking out of a field of crops. The site was steadily becoming more disappointing as the investigators looked on. With the aid of the report from the previous team that had worked on the crashes, the investigators were able to confirm one thing. The previous report was absolutely correct. The planes were some of the last that had attempted to leave China and had been caught by anti-air guns positioned to stop them. Apart from some of the battered ration kits and a dog tag and some other personal effigies, the search was fruitless. Worst of all was the lack of anything that led us back to Daily, or even a hint that perhaps some Americans were still out there. They would need to widen their search, perhaps into Tibet. Had anyone managed to escape the crash or otherwise survived the evacuation, then they would have quickly tried to move on. The investigators could take solace in one thing alone at this point. At least the scenery would continue to be interesting. dig deeper. As deep as you can. I'm very interested in where this is gonna lead. So GDP is speeding up in its increase. But other than that, we're doing jackboot. 40.11%. So that should keep increasing, right? Oh, and I need to unpause the game if I want something. Yeah, it keeps increasing, okay. It's just very slow. No luck. Oh, damn. Okay, that's not a good thing. The expanded investigation site demanded a considerably larger staff for the investigators to make use of. Forensic teams, excavating equipment were all requested from the home islands. Alongside the additional manpower came a number of small boats, trucks, and even a helicopter in order to better survey the landscape. I don't like where this is going. While the area surrounding the crashed planes was surveyed by the new team, the actual investigators had moved on to Tibet. There they had hoped to find some evidence of the route taken by the SACO after leaving China. Yet the trail was quickly found to be colder than the mountains the investigators trekked through. Locals confirmed that American soldiers had indeed traveled through their communities, but they had never stayed for a long time and never left a trace of their presence. The Chinese side of the investigation proved to be equally disappointing. Despite searching the area in what could only be described as a thorough manner, the team found little more than a few scraps of metal from the crashed planes. They had sunk to the bottom of a nearby river, and upon their extraction, the scraps unearthed some shards of ancient Chinese pottery. These were jokingly regarded as the real finds of the entire expedition, although the investigators were never allowed in on the joke. After several weeks of searching, only one more object of interest was found, a single plane. It had gone down over the Himalayas, and by examining what little remained of it, the investigators were able to achieve one thing. It told them the same, now redundant fact that they had known since they first read the initial report from 20 years ago. Okay, it makes sense that we wouldn't find anything afterwards, but I was hoping that they could investigate or find some information about what went wrong, stuff like that. Obviously a wrong move on my part. Alas. A waste of time. Jesus. Okay, well, we get 10.6% bonus. School coverage is also pretty good. So let's go on with the schools. Built a bunch of them. Okay, these ones are not worth it. These ones are. These events have great names. A waste of time. The investigators returned to Tokyo branch office, having obtained nothing of value from the crash sites in China and Tibet. Not once had anything of any relation to Davy cropped up, and it therefore seemed as if the connection between him and SACO was a secret kept only by the out-of-reach American officials and Davy himself. At the very least, the investigators were able to confirm the findings of the initial investigation. In 1940, 1940s were most certainly accurate. Yet this ultimately did little to dampen the impact of their failure. They would be forced to remain in Tokyo for a good while now, whilst the government turned towards its other assets for aid. In the United States, the Japanese government employed a number of spies to provide them with insights as to the workings of the United States government. Since the Davy conspiracy had first been uncovered, these figures have been waiting to find out exactly what the Americans might know about the situation. Their time was now soon to come with the Tokyo desperate for answers. Besides, guarded state secrets must surely contain some useful information. Well, we're gonna see. 24 days left for you. Still in a deficit, but a small one. An extremely small one, actually. Extremely small one. Getting access to archives. Naturally, anything pertaining to covert military operation in a hostile foreign power would be closely guarded behind safes, locks, and guarded doors. The first step to accessing these records was very simple. The archive building would be scouted out day and night. Each entrance would be checked for alarms, guard patrols would be memorized, and any potential job opportunity you might get one inside the building would be quickly taken. More and more information was gathered regarding the archives. Photographs were taken of the exterior and surrounding area at every hour of the day. Eventually, blueprints of the buildings were discovered, providing the spies with a new level of insight. A plan was beginning to take shape. The next step would involve getting inside the archive for long enough to expand upon the limited insider knowledge. The fastest possible route from one entrance to the SACO files would be plotted and if possible tested before the actual break-in would take place. These new few steps would be delicately executed, even with pressure from the government back in Japan. Some back in Tokyo had demanded a quicker operation, yet the discourse of action was ruled out. It was better to not start a diplomatic incident with the United States, while at the same time dealing with possible conspiracy. Just a little bit more time. Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. A limited amount of sense, but sense nonetheless. Okay, we're gonna be producing 5 per day now. Or, upgrading 5 per day now. I love even numbers. SACO records found. Okay, so let's read this one and then end the episode. In the end, it took merely one open door and a faulty electrical system to gain access to the SACO files, for the janitor on duty had been careless enough to leave the back entrance way unlocked after finishing for the night. 5 minutes later, the power went out and the security guard called for an electrician to resolve the issue. For the brief 15 minutes, the building was completely dark and security a little laxer as the security guard himself escorted the electrician to the fuse box. Yet that was all it took. At that time, a man in black coat entered the building and removed exactly one document from the Chinese section of the archive, before leaving and driving off in a rather anonymous van. He would later meet with the janitor and the electrician to celebrate a successful operation. The cargo of that van was then handed off to another agent waiting at a nearby airfield. After a number of planes and a car journeys from the east coast to the west and a brief stop in San Francisco, he boarded a boat headed for Hawaii. Waiting there was General Fujiwara himself, who had been anxious to see the documents delivered. Now they were in his hands, safe on his personal plane en route to Tokyo. It was there that the files were finally opened. Behind closed doors, Fujiwara and the Prime Minister, alongside other trusted officials, gathered to hear what the Americans knew. It was a simple enough thing, a mere list of the fates of the SACO members, listed alphabetically beginning with those killed. One name of interest cropped up, General Joseph Stilwell, confirmed to have been killed in action. The assembled politicians continued to scan the list. The assembled politicians? Okay. The list with a growing sense of angst and urgency, just as it seems they were about to hit another dead end, consisting of nothing but returned. More and more Americans were listed as missing in action, possibly having been forced to stay behind. Yet one name made the officials pause in their tracks. The name of a rumored friend of DEOE, Miles Milton E. Admiral, missing in action. Seen last 3 days prior to full SACO evacuation. Admiral Miles never left China. Okay, now I'm gonna let it run till the 1st of January so we can have another report on the state of co-prosperity sphere, and we're gonna deal with the technology and focuses and everything next time. So anyway, it was a pleasure. I enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you in the next one, where we are gonna start on 1st of January 1969 with a debt to GDP of 93.6 and a GDP growth of 280. Actually, no, not the GDP growth. The GDP growth is 4.303%, but the GDP is now 281.88 billion, which is amazing. So the next focus we're gonna take is then gonna be what? A model mandate, and then we get the Hakkō. So, thank you. See you in the next one.